I'm going to read this. I want to get your reaction. We'll talk about pros and cons, okay?
Okay.
By the way, switching to recovery has saved me a lot of money on my substance abuse. Sorry.
Then it was Amazon, though.
That was Geico. That's what that little lizard ought to say. Switching to recovery. I don't even know what accent I just did. It's like Alaskan. Alaskan. Look, a bear. Okay, this is an article, and I cannibalized this article from February of this year. Okay. Personal possession of a small amount of hard drugs is now legal in the Canadian province of British Columbia. The controversial move is intended to reduce deaths from drug use. The personal possession of 2.5 grams of hard drugs, including cocaine, crack cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, and morphine, has now been decriminalized. This temporary exemption means a person found with small quantity of these drugs will not have them seized or face arrest or any criminal charges. A research scientist at a BC Center on Substance Use, her name's Cora DeBeck in Vancouver, and she is associate professor of the School of Public Policy. Okay, she backs this and says research shows that prohibition does not work, but compassionate treatment of drug-dependent people can work. The benefit of this is those addicted to drugs won't be compelled to go to extraordinary lengths to replenish their supply once it gets seized. Before, if they were seized, they may go to a less reliable source. Let's talk about that in a second. But then on the other side, retired police officer Chuck Duché, that's my Canadian French, president of the Drug Prevention Network, says he's strongly opposed to the move. It really doesn't address the issues at all. It's not going to save any lives because, he said, a number of the deaths are by overdose. And he said whether they're legal or not legal doesn't make them any less likely to kill you. So tell me what you think about this and maybe some pros and cons of how they're doing this and what you think is the idea behind it.
I don't think it's very compelling to just say we're just not going to seize drugs anymore, and if they're a small amount, and that's going to solve a problem. I do actually, okay, there's some pros to this. I do think that it could save lives if you have someone who is dependent on fentanyl, for example. And let's say they can use fentanyl and they're tolerant to it. They get arrested, they have their drugs seized, they sit in jail for a week or two.
Okay.
They come out, they want to get their fix. That's the most vulnerable that a person is to overdose and die.
Okay.
Because it's already out of their system, they're not tolerant anymore, but they really want to use. So I can see that as a life-saving thing. I don't know. I don't really know how. I don't think it addresses the issue, because if you're just leaving the people with their drugs and people know that they can get away with it, I think it's probably on some level going to make the problem worse.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really address how to treat people if you're just leaving them on the street. What are you going to do with these people? How are you going to help them? So I think that's kind of the
maybe there was the fear of consequences may have helped in some way, and I think you're taking that away.
I think it's going to be a lot more visible now. I think there's going to be people all over the street shooting up and smoking out in the open, and there's not going to be much they can do about it.
I did see this, and I should have put it on here because this is what popped into my mind. If this lady that's for it is saying, and I get her point, okay, on one level, I get what she's saying. If you, let's say I guess the amount that we're talking about we're not talking about a year's supply of hard drugs here. We're talking about like a day supply-ish, something like that. Yeah. So if you get caught with that and you get it taken away, and I guess she's assuming they won't get arrested if they get it seized and they're right back out, they're going to go get it again from somewhere else. And it could be a bad batch or whatever she's talking about. But here's my point. If you just legalize it, they're going to get what they're going to get. It is going to be what it is on the street. What popped into my mind is what could be next. If they're just saying we're not going to seize it, then when is the government going to start making it. And then all of a sudden they sell the meth and they sell the fentanyl and it's good. And you're not going to get poisoned by other stuff in it. And is that where this is heading? Because that's a money-making machine right there. And far be it from any government to want to make any money. I know they don't ever think about that kind of stuff.
The idea of government-regulated drugs, where you have, they would call them like harm reduction centers, where you go in, you get a clean needle, you get some clean dope, and then you can use it there. And they'll say that they're going to tax that somehow and use that money to create treatment centers or programs. That's going to be the gist. If it works that way, I don't know. But I think this is kind of an extreme
The
solution.
lottery.
Yeah, I know.
Was supposed to help education all over everywhere.
How are we doing with that?
I don't know, but I didn't win the Powerball. I actually didn't buy a ticket. Sorry.
If prohibition doesn't work, which it's not,
$1
it doesn't seem to work. Prohibition isn't seeming to be very effective.
Right.
What's the middle ground with it?
That's the question, right?
What do we need to do on a policy level?
Throwing everybody in prison doesn't work. We know that. Throwing them in a box and isolating them doesn't work because it doesn't take away any of the issues. It may take away the drugs, but then you're going to have other situations. And then legalization. So, yeah, what is the middle ground?
I think it's going to involve like major programs to help people get into sober housing, to get people into job recovery programs, to get businesses to help hire people, to give people more of a purpose. I think that's going to be the kind of measures that we're going to need before any of this decriminalization stuff. Because decriminalization, to me, it's going to solve one problem and create another problem. Mm-hmm. And it's a wash. Yeah, on its face, I don't think it's going to actually solve anything. It's going to make the streets a lot uglier.
Yeah.
And that's the case already in some cities where they're very lenient on this
And
stuff.
they are already lenient and they won't take you to jail. So it's same thing with shoplifting and all these little crimes. If you're not going to get prosecuted or anything's going to happen.
We'll just do it out in the open in broad daylight.
That's right. And nobody's ever going to want to go into those areas, so the businesses are going to shut. Like it's a snowball effect.
Right.
In the wrong way, in certain areas are just going to be horrible.
Right.
I
think we should cane people again.
Man, caning.
Singapore's clean.
Dude, caning works, man.
You drop a gum wrapper in Singapore, you get caned 40 times.
My dad fully embraced caning. I was a full-fledged cane toad as growing up as a kid.
Toad.
Caning, waterboarding, whatever you need to do. Russian roulette, that always works.
Thin the herd a little bit.
Thin the herd. Darwin, what's that? Darwin Award every year. Anyway, I don't know, so hard.
Dude.
We've got something. To me, you have to find a way to give people purpose and make them okay with themselves, and it's mental stuff. And when that happens, the need for them doing it is going to go away, and it's going to help solve the problem.
That takes a lot of investment in individual people.
Massive amounts of community work.
It does.
Yes.
And the community is going to have to get together and solve this problem. It's not going to be little policies like this that are going to make the difference between solving the drug problem versus not. But I do agree I actually agree with both of the people in here, the one for and against, because I don't think it's a really great solution. But I also don't know if just punishing everyone that uses drugs is a great solution either.
But you see, it's like it is today with society, with almost everything. We have people on the far ends of the spectrum, and they're not willing to budge on and that ends up being a huge problem. You're not going to solve the problem. It's got to come somewhere. There's going to have to be compromise, and you're going to have to roll the dice and figure out some ways and try to do it. And that's the hard part with a subject like addiction and substance abuse. Is it's such a touchy subject. Nobody wants to commit in politics to talk about it because they're scared. It's too touchy of a subject. It's like there's certain subjects that are taboo to make a hardline stand on because you're afraid to alienate your voting base. So none of it's ever going to get resolved because nobody's ever going to talk. It'll never be a main platform.
Right.
And it's going to get so bad that it needs to be. Welcome to the 14th step. Please like and subscribe. Ring that bell to get our news feed put in. The algorithm really helps us to spread the word about recovery.